All right. Hello and welcome to the KubeBuilder Controller Runtime and Controller Tools meeting for Thursday, December 3rd, 2020. As a reminder, this is being recorded, so don't say anything you don't want to be recorded for all posterity and uploaded to the internet. All right. Looks like we have a few things on the agenda today. I think the first is from Adirio about Go module support. So why don't you take it away?
Okay. Yeah, we have detected that we weren't fully applying Go modules when we changed to version 2 of KubeBuilder, and some tools weren't integrating correctly with it. For example, Phil raised the other day that Packager doesn't understand that we are in version 2.3.1. It still think that the latest version is 1.0.9, if I'm not mistaken. And also other tools have the same issues. So I wanted to ask if it would be a good idea to um, change the change needed to fulfill with Go modules, so that the version 2 are recognized, is only to change the module path to include a version 2 at the end. And there is a link in the agenda that shows which would be the change required, and we could apply it to old versions of KubeBuilder 2.3.1, or maybe even older versions, so that the tools recognize those versions. And I wanted to know which is the position of the rest of the members about that.
I think it's probably fine to just do a patch release with the new version with the proper module path or something. We're doing it for version 3 anyway, so it makes sense to see if we can export it to version 2, because previously it wasn't really go-gettable, so I don't think it's a problem of breaking import paths as much. I think there's only a few people that are importing it directly. And so they'd probably be fine, but I think we probably want to hear from the operator SDK folks on that first.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
So do I.
I think they are importing it by hash instead of version, so I think they don't have an issue over there.
Yep.
So there is, I actually, to do this, I need someone with privileges to create a branch where the tag for version 3.1 is, because I cannot merge into a tag. I have the pull request ready, but I cannot merge into anything.
Just one question. Do you really need to care about what was released already? Cannot you, because it was not working this way before. We fixed it in the master, and you'll be fixed for the next release. So, and
Yeah.
before it was not using like a package, was more just only the two.
Well, we don't. Okay, sorry, go.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I think that it would be nice to have like a dot as version 2 release at least, because we are going to have like version 1 releases which are recognized without anything in the path, and also then version 3 releases that will be a bit strange, but it's not really required, if that's the question, because version 3 has already that fixed.
Yeah, it's nice until we can get version 3 fully out the door and stable.
So just a small question: should we current version is .3.1? Should we like increase the patch version and go for .3.2 or?
Yeah, I think so. I
Okay.
think that's what we should do.
Yeah, like if we just did a version 3 release, like is it that we're not ready to do a version 3 release and then that's our hesitation there, right? Because as soon as we do a version 3 release, it should be go gettable for version 3, and just version 2 will not be go gettable, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, I think it's just that we're not quite ready to do version 3. We're getting there. We're real close, but I think just like in the meantime, and for like people for whatever reason that want it for historical reasons.
And so then the solution is to just change the paths to have V2 in them for the V2 branch, right?
I don't know
Yeah.
if I can share the screen.
There's a link in the meeting notes that has the patch.
Are you able to see my screen right now?
Yeah.
I mean, the change is like adding version 2 to a different set of imports and also to go mod if
But
find it.
are you doing this against the tag? Am I right?
Sorry?
Instead of you do the pull request, the compare against the branch, you are using the tag. I believe that we need to push to V2 branch and then do a patch release like
yeah, exactly.
2.4.
Yeah, exactly. I cannot merge into. I cannot create a pull request. As you can see, there's no new pull request button because .3.1 is a tag, not a branch. So we need to set a branch here, and then we would be able to commit our pull request or whatever.
Isn't there a release -2 branch?
There's just V2. There's a V2 branch.
Yeah, the V2
I don't know.
exists.
Is that release V2 or is that something else?
I doesn't know as well.
Yeah, I'll double check after the meeting.
Megan was the last person who made the latest release.
Yeah, we might not have a release -2 branch for this. Yeah, so I can create one.
Well, I guess we just created at the latest tag.
Yeah, that was the latest tag was the one that the commit that I took to make the backport branch in my fork.
All right, sounds good.
And a small question: should we also do it for version like .2 and .1 and .0, or just for .3 and forget about it?
I think the others just work.
It I think just for 2.3 is probably fine.
Okay. Perfect. So that would be solved once the branch is created. I will create the pull request and we can get a release.
All right, I'll
Awesome.
do it after the meeting and then ping you.
Cool.
So if I have permissions, I can do it too. I'll just sync up with you after the meeting.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, I think the next topic is from Eric. So if he wants to start with it.
Oh, am I next? Hold on. Just pulling up the agenda now. Yes, okay. So next week, actually, let me share my screen. It's probably easier. Great. Can you all see that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Next week, 120 is supposed to be released. Kubernetes 120, and assuming that 070 gets released either this week or early next week, I'd like to ask what the feasibility is of merging this PR that's currently open, which bumps Kubernetes to 1.20 in controller runtime, and then cutting a 0.80 release after that. I'm asking this mainly because in the SDK, we're kind of transitioning to getting Kubernetes releases into the SDK as soon as possible, and having not special releases, but considering Kubernetes release dates in our release cycle so that we can have a release pretty quickly after Kubernetes has been released. And so I'm wondering if we can do the same thing in controller runtime and cut like a Kubernetes release. I think there definitely aren't any breaking changes based on the PR that's currently open. So it'd be as simple as just merging that and cutting a new one. But I want to see what people think about that.
I think it's, oops, go ahead. Someone else's.
Okay, it's me, Ivo. Yeah, I was actually wondering because we never managed to do a 0.7 release. Actually, we only have alphas, which is the version that would have Kube 1.19. If it would make sense to just skip having a release based on Kube 1.19 entirely and instead directly go to 120 because the release of that is basically just a couple of days away, right?
I mean, I think we should probably have the 0.7 release with 1.19. Just like people, a lot of times there's a segment of users that very much like to have particular versions matching for whatever reasons. Sometimes there's changes in Kubernetes. Sometimes it revolves around policy or whatever. So I think it's probably a good idea to have a 1.19 release. I think just at this point, the only thing blocking 0.7 and also, yeah, the main reason we haven't released 0.7 yet was an incompatible change that we haven't quite gotten a fixed merge for yet, just due to everything. But I think if we just tackle that last PR, we should be fine to release 0.7 and then something else with no breaking changes or right after it.
I think Eric has a PR for the webbook change that we need to make. I just haven't had time to review it yet before releasing 0.7.
Is there a new PR for that?
Yeah, because we didn't get any update on the old one, I think.
Okay, can you?
But is it a blocker for 0.7?
Okay. It is because it removed some stuff we were depending on. Or 1.19 removed some machinery we were depending on. And so we have to fix this somehow. Like otherwise there's a bit of functionality that just goes away in controller runtime, and that would be not great for a release.
Yeah. I just posted the PR in a child of this issue.
So for the 0.7, we have the RxPR and one bug to fix. Then we can cut the stable one.
Yep.
Which bug is that?
I doesn't know the bug. I just it was my understatement about the explanation.
So if we look at the milestone, there's a bunch of things. I can go over these later and see what's blocking and what's not for 0.70. and leave the rest out. But
Okay,
yeah,
cool. So it sounds like we are okay with cutting 0.80, assuming everything goes well. That PR that's currently open for merging the 120 bump, and that there are no crazy changes that need to be made pretty soon afterwards. That's correct.
Yep.
Excellent. And also, if I can help in any way, then I'm more than willing to. Just let me know what I need to do. I can run the release if needed as well.
Cool.
Great. That's it then.
All right. Back to Adirio, I think.
The next topic in the agenda is pretty long. I don't know how much time does Phil need for the demo. If it doesn't need that much time, we could go first to the demo he wants to show and then go for the other one. What do you think, Phil?
I can keep it short. Maybe it really depends on how many questions there are, but there probably won't be that many since it's a follow-up. So let me see what I can do here. Sorry, just sharing my stuff here. Almost there. Share the screen. All right, are you able to see this?
Yeah.
All right. So a couple weeks ago, I showed just kind of the idea of creating this like config gen program, which generates the config for you. And so the idea there was like you can in the project file have this spec that says, okay, what components do you want to generate and what's the image and what's the project name and stuff like that. And then it does, and then it generates the config for you, rather so that you can kind of specify like the experience is if you just want to, enable certain things, you can just set them in the project file and it sets the stuff up for you. And so there's a question about, well, how do plugins work, and then how does this fit in with customized and that sort of stuff? So this is written as both a standalone and as a customized plugin. It works in both. The same binary works in both. And so this is just a demo of what it would look like with customize. So in this case, you're running as a generator, for instance, and then so that same sort of the same thing that goes in the project file I put in here with a couple more features. So I have like a dev and a prod version. And so if you do customize build, with enabling plugins here, you can see that it runs it as a customized plugin. And so this means that the questions around like, well, what if a user wants to, patch this thing or have the same level of customization they do with customize, they do. And it's very familiar how they do it, right? They would just add patches here or that sort of thing. And then the question of like, how do we do plugins? How do plugins work differently? And kind of my recommendation would have been would be kind of do a plugins as actually as a transformer, right? And so if you have like operator, SDK, specific like plugins, you could do a transformer and it would allow you to have a lot more flexibility with what you do by not having to work around what's there and uncommon things. You can delete resources, for instance, or add resources completely. And then just a quick demo of like some features I've added since then. I have a dev and a prod version. The dev version, I have kind of this prod version. The dev version, I've added this development options to generate certs. So this is kind of cool, I think, where we can automatically generate the certificate as part of, creating the configuration in the plugin. And so you can wire in the CA bundle in all the places it goes, and then create the secret and wire in the secret. So that's one nice capability for development. We can just generate a certificate that's an hour long, and then users don't have to figure out how to install Certificate Manager or something when trying to like develop their webhook, right? And then the second thing I added was the component config option. So you can specify your component config in a file, and then reference it, and then it will go ahead and generate the config map, and then also wire this into the appropriate places. So in this case, manager config. You can see then it gets wired into the deployment. And again, this is in that vein of like, what as a consumer or as a user of KubeBuilder do I want? I just want to give it a component config file path and then have it figure out how that gets wired in, rather than uncommenting 3 or 4 different lines in a customization YAML to make it happen. So that's my demo. You can use it as in as a customized function now, and so patches and everything else just kind of works the way it does in Customize, and a couple more features. Questions, comments?
I would like it if you have the record of your last presentation. I could not attend the meeting. I was in PTO. If you have, I would like to watch.
I think it's in the last recording, which I just haven't uploaded because I've been a little bit behind on uploading all of those.
Sure.
I can do like when I think this is getting relatively close to, I think, what would be available as an opt-in possibility. So I think the modules thing was a blocker because it breaks the libraries I'm using. But once that's fixed, I can probably get this in a state where it's ready as a proposal that could be accepted. And as part of that, I can do a 20-minute walkthrough of all the various aspects of it as a standalone thing.
Yes, I was interested, like, we would replace how the things works now by using customized. This is, I understand that is your idea. And then how we can extend this. I believe that we can use the same plugin if I go change some parameters.
Yeah, how you extend it. I can do as part of the demo, I can actually write my own extension to do some, some toy thing, but that would delete a resource, add a resource, and modify a resource in place or something like that. And then I can check that in as an example for an extension as part of the PR.
Really, thank you.
All right, looks awesome so far. I look forward to it. All right, back to Adirio for the last thing on the agenda, I think.
Yeah, okay. This is gonna be a bit longer though. We have been discussing lately about the project file and which data should we store there. And there were some issues raised lately about trying to store everything needed to recreate the project in a future just by having the project file config. And there's also another aspect that we have talked several times that we want to add, but we don't get to it yet. That it's about adding external resources and using them to generate controllers for them, or we can't actually do for, I think webhooks required to be local, but controllers allow like external resources, but we are not able to provide that yet. But the thing is that we have been like adding additional fields to the project config files, to the sections where the resources are listed, and it's starting to get a bit messy. And right now we have like two different representations of the resource. The one that we use internally, that is in the package model resource, and the one that we use for the configuration file. And there is like having two different models, one for the configuration file and other for the internal use for something that is the same, doesn't seem to be a very good decision, and will probably be problematic when we move to the second phase of the plugin system, to the plugin phase 2. So one of the issues I raised was to try to have a single view of the resource and use it for both storing it in the config file and also use it internally. So Camila was working on adding some additional fields that were needed for the part that I said before, the part that we wanted to recreate the project from the project file. She did a couple pull requests, but when lately she joined them in this one. So I don't have the screen shared. 1 second. Yeah, to this one. So basically the test project files will be something like this, that will add like the version used for the APIs, if it's namespaced. This is info that we don't have currently. If the controller was deployed also, which webhooks were scaffolded to, and which version of the webhook. So all this is information that we don't currently have and that we need to recreate the project. We don't have that functionality yet, so it's still working for a future, but I think that if we manage to add this information before we migrate to version 3, we can get a better transition into the next version. There has been some discussion if we should just add fields to these resources or actually redesign them. We have been jumping forward in one direction and the other. At the end, the model that she defines here with an AP field, a controller field, and a webhooks field seems to be the one that we have reached some kind of consensus on them. I also added a pull request. I think it's no. This one. The idea. Are you seeing my
No.
screen right now? No.
We lost the screen share.
Okay. So the idea was to apply something like this model. The group, the version, and the kind are the only things that are currently being stored. If I'm not mistaken, maybe plural is also being stored if it's irregular. And the rest of the fields are, for example, qualified group, package name, and import alias were fields from the resource, from the internal representation that we can implement as methods instead of fields, so that we don't have to store them because they can be computed from the other terms. And so the idea was to add some of these of these new fields, like controller that defines if we have scaffolded a controller for it, or definition. Actually, this image is a bit definition shouldn't be definition, should be API. I don't know why this image is still using
I
definition.
think it is before a
Yeah,
lot of discussions about names and
yeah.
everything.
Actually,
Now
that name should be API. So basically, we have like the group, the version, and the kind, the plural that were already there, and we have like new fields like the domain, because right now we only have one domain per project field, per project file. But if we finally add the external resources, and for those external resources that are already like, there's some kind of external resources right now for built-in resources. They are not implemented in the best way possible. Probably that should be fixed a bit. But you can actually create, for example, a controller for the core namespace resource, and KubeBuilder will accept that. But if we don't have the domain, we won't be able to distinguish one local namespace from another namespace. A path would also be needed to know where to import it from in case of external resources, and a external would also be needed in the API section, would also be needed to know if it's an external resource. And then we would have a controller boolean over here, and defaulting validation and conversion booleans over here that could define if we are able to, if we have scaffolded those resources. So we have discussed this a bit in other sessions, and we have said that we may need to postpone this for version 4 of the project file. I think it's quite mature, and we may be able to get it merged before version 3. So we won't need a version 4, but I don't know what do you think about this, if we are rushing a bit and we may delay the version 3, and you prefer to go for a version 4, or if we should just add some fields for now, that adding fields is not a problem, and redesign it a bit later for version 4, or I don't know, or not added them at all. That are the three options basically. So I would like to have some feedback from you guys.
And just to be clear for the people who, anybody who doesn't quite have context as well, that would be specifically version 4 of the project file, like Adirio said, which doesn't necessarily mean we need to release version 4 of KubeBuilder, as long as we keep support for project version 3. So we could release support for version 4 format in like, 3.1 or 3.2 or whatever. Since we have decoupled the project file format from the general project format, we can make those changes without, as long as we don't remove version 3, it's not a breaking change, so we can play around with stuff like this.
But if you change, for example, one of the suggestions was move the CRG version for inside of the API. So would not it easy consider a break change, because you are moving around things? For example, if you release now the V3, we have the CRG version and the webhook version in the root.
Yeah, exactly.
So this was my concern. Just to clarify a little bit my motivations on that. Like, I started the idea of let's try to keep in the project file all data that is input for the users. Then we can rerun the commands and recreate a project from the scratch. Probably to do things like create a tool to help them to migrate in the next, for the next plugins, for the next versions, because this is a common complaint for the SDK project users, like, it's too hard to upgrade. It's very hard to take the latest version. So something like to make their life easier. But if we don't have the data that they input to create the project, it's like impossible to try to tooling that. But I thought in something very simple, and they a lot of suggestions and ideas raised. So it's that. But I think that the 3.0 we really need cut as soon as possible. So if nobody has objections, if we be able to reach a consensus about that before the release, I think it would be nice. But maybe it could not be a blocker. I doesn't know. What do you think, folks?
Just to add a few comments. Currently, we have like the version 2 project file and the version 3 alpha. So we don't have a version 3 stable project version. So actually, we could add or modify fields without breaking backwards compatibility if we do it before we release version 3. That doesn't mean if we merge it before the first alpha of the version 3 release, but it does mean that we should do it before the first stable version of KubeBuilder version 3. Or the other option would be try to make whatever right now is in version 3 alpha project version into a stable project version and leave for version 4 the changes that we are proposing right now. Basically, the only two changes that are a breaking change against the version 3 alpha, not against the version 2, because none of them is breaking change against the version 2, are this version field over here, that it was in the root object instead of inside this is the API class, and also this version over here, that it was also a root object. And these two are defined in the version 3 alpha already. So those could be the only two things that needed to be modified from the current version 3 alpha.
Maybe I'm wrong, but I believe that the expectation, the problem is that the concern that maybe the others can raise is like we would like to have the 3 Go plugin stable as soon that we bump the support to 1.20, the Kubernetes API. This is the reason, like maybe it's not possible, cut. Do this before the cut.
So, I mean, if people don't have objections to this schema, or if we don't need any major changes, and the PR is already, like, we could. So, like, the only concern is that, like, merging, like, how big is this change? Merging, quote unquote, a big change right before we cut stable without another alpha release might not be a good idea. But, like, I mean, A, we can always do patch releases, and B, if it's literally like just changing the names of fields, or like adding in new fields that we record but we're not using yet, it's probably like, if we do it quickly, we could probably do it now.
Actually, the change in the project file, only in the project file, is mostly done by this pull request by Camila. She adds, I think she doesn't add all the fields that you have seen in that image that I will update with the new name. She only adds, if I'm not mistaken,
In the first comment, it has that suggestions that you made, that it would be the only thing more or less that is missing. And review, because I changed that stuff after. with the
Yeah, I think
situations.
group is included, version is included, kind, plural, the API, controller, and webhooks are included, and the only things that are not included are path, domain, and external, if I'm not mistaken, right, Camila?
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So those fields are not included in that pull request, but that only modifies the project file and how we see it. It still has two different internal models for the project file and for the internal usage of the resources. The other pull request that I did, which is a bit bigger, um, changes. It's not ready, but it's mostly ready. It needs. I think I only need to add a couple tests and generate the test data. It actually changes the config file so that we don't have any more. Uh, mm, I removed the GVK which was being used to have like the second representation of the resource, and I made the config file. Where's this? Here. Directly import the resource class. So with this pull request, we will be able to only have one representation that I think that it's what it really will raise problems in a future. But this requires to change the project file because there's too much information inside the resource type.
I think if we try to, I think, okay, I agree that it is cannot be a blocker because the expectation for don't break the expectation. But if we try to do that before the cut, maybe the strategy, the best strategy is like we try to merge what changes the project file layout, which is something that can cause break changes, and then choose improvements in the code to be easier to keep maintain and to grow the stuff. We can do after because doesn't impact the users at all, or
Okay.
To clarify, the delta, the externally visible delta from Camilla's changes to your changes, those are just additions of fields, right?
Yes.
So
I would have to double check, but yes, there are three additional fields.
assuming that's the case, and I have a comment. We might just want to make it one field, but like, assuming that's the case, we could merge Camilla's PR now, and then we could merge your PR afterwards. And since your PR wouldn't be a breaking change to the project file, since it's only adding a new optional field to the project file, we could do that later.
It just a brief note. It would be breaking in the sense that the library will not have an exported class that it actually has, but it won't be breaking in the sense that the project file will not be like broken. It will only add a couple fields over there.
I think a breaking change for who consuming the API, like it changed the name of something or the method, it's fine. I think the most critical is breaking change in
for the users.
For the users, yes, because then we need to push a new plugin version, something upper version then.
Yes, I agree, but I wanted to note it that for the developers like Operator SDK or like that, it would be a small. They may not be importing that class at all. They will probably not be importing that class at all, but it could be breaking in that sense from the library point of view. But from the break point of view, it wouldn't be broken, a breaking change.
Let me know if I'm wrong, but if you, okay, by following the rule, if we introduce breaking chains for who consuming. We are just bumping a new version in the CLI tool, like 3.0, 4.0, 5.0, and but not in the plugins, which are used by the I think so. If
Yeah.
so, I think it
Yeah.
would be fine.
I think that's fine. Does anybody else have comments on the general case or specifically the merge Camilla's PR before V3 and then do the rest of the cleanup afterwards?
I don't
As
know.
long as, yeah, go ahead, Adrian.
I don't know if I think I showed you an example of how the project file would look like, right?
Yeah. Yep, you did.
Yeah. The few things that maybe it's valid to ask now is like we have now CRG version and the webhook version. Then we based on the suggestions, the webhooks go inside the structure webhooks as API version. And the API, the CRG version go the structure API. So Adri make a suggestion for we rename that for version and version. Are everybody okay with that, or has a better name? API version both.
That's a good point. Probably renaming that to like webhook version or object version or something like that, just to mirror the CRD version.
Yeah.
The thing is that right now we have version v1, so as they are in the root field, we have webhook version and CRD version. But after that, it would be inside an object. So my suggestion was to remove CRD because it's no longer needed because there's no conflict. It's AP version, and the same with webhooks because it's gonna be webhooks version.
But I think it's more intuitive if we came the same name because it's the name of the argument. I know that we should not do the model basis in the UX, but if to keep maintain, maybe using the same name, you'll be easier to know. Okay, it is the webhook version, it is the CRG version.
Yeah, I think my only concern just with the name API version is that it's a little bit like the whole thing is an API and there's also the API field. So it's a little bit of an overloaded term. It's not the end of the world if we go with this, to me, though. I just before we go down into the nitty gritty, though, do people have comments on the general strategy or whatever? I thought I heard someone speaking up just a moment ago.
Yeah, I'm personally fine with all this as long as both Camilla's and Adrian's PRs line up, because I know that there was a lot of back and forth about how this should look. And that Adrian's PR is, yeah, not breaking except in that one edge case.
Yeah, we probably until modding. I think we have been speaking a lot, Adria, and we try to reach like a consensus in the names and everything that it's good for B3 because I thought that it was the best approach. If B3 came a consensus, so probably it's shape enough for the community as well. So, but yeah. I think we make a lot of back and forth, but we are closer to closing the chapter. Near.
I think that right now the only discussion was in the version names that I've just raised, and the other thing that we had that we were a bit debating about it is if the ones that I propose are really needed or aren't needed to detect external types. And that's a problematic question because right now we don't allow users to define external types, despite we have a claim that we want to do that. But there is a special case that we do allow, and those are well-known built-in types. Like, for example, the core namespace would be an example, and those require some fields to distinguish between a local namespace or one from the core group. So I think the only two things that we were debating right now, Camille and me, was those, the version and the extra fields that I proposed. But the rest of our both proposals are aligned right now.
Yeah, in my opinion, my intention was like he started to do this step by step, let's track the info that is inputted, and after we think if we should redesign or not, like one step per time. I was like resonating because this idea of support external types, it's really nice. We need to address that, but we don't have the helper to do that yet. So I thought that maybe that field should be better added when we have the helper. However, has one way, has one way, like if we change the sort of the commands, has one scenario where maybe we would need this data before the feature to try to recreate the project from the scratch. So because of this.
But that's also a feature that we don't have right now. I mean, there's no helper to recreate projects right now.
So can we agree to keep just the simplest one, like keep the same name, CRG version, webhook versions, and the plural, and not add the new feature attributes like external and domain, and what was the other?
Path, if I'm not
Path.
mistaken.
Yeah.
The thing, the built-in types are a bit special because if we use KubeBuilder create AP, we set it to not to create a resource, but to create a controller. And we specify a well-known group from the built-in types. KubeBuilder will default to those types. And that's like a really special case that we have. But right now we are not able to distinguish a project file created with those resources to the one that is not created without those resources. So that was my main concern about not adding them right now, because I think there are still some corner cases that would be able to be created right now that even with only the additions that Camila proposes wouldn't be recreatable in that sense. But I think that that's the only point that we have to agree on before this. Well, before mine gets merged. I think this one is pretty close to getting merged. I think we have gone like through several. Yeah, look, 103 comments in this pull request. So I think it was pretty close to getting merged, this one. Just needed like the approval of the new design and whatever your feedback was in that sense.
All right, so we only have 2 minutes left. So I think the TLDR of that discussion was, I think it's, let's get Camilla's merged. We might be able to get the additional PR merged as well. it would probably be a good idea, considering the corner case is just raised, or at the very least, get the externally facing changes for like external types merged in a second follow-up PR or something, just to avoid user-facing changes coming in. But yeah, so I think get Camilla's merged and then we can figure out the rest later, but it's probably a good idea to get the external merged based on the feedback or the corner case that you just listed.
Okay. Really thank you for all your inputs, folks, and the attentions, and the collabs, and the patience with this stuff.
Does anybody have any? Actually, we're at 10, so should probably go unless anybody has anything like super dire. But otherwise, see y'all in a couple weeks.
Jesus, you had a question in the chat that I think we didn't answer.
It was just an impact if these PRs are going to impact the releases that Eric was talking about.
Yeah, the idea. Well, Eric was talking about the releases of controller runtime, which is not the same project, so it shouldn't affect that one. But it would affect the release of the version 3 of KubeBuilder, but that's not as close as the other ones. So I think that we will be able to get this merged before the release. And also, we still have to go through the alpha or maybe even beta process for the version 3. We haven't still released an alpha version, so I'm pretty sure we will be able to get this merged before.
Yeah, we can always do it like a second. Like we could do the first alpha without and the second alpha with if we really need to.
Yeah, for example.
Thank you.
All right. See everybody in a couple weeks.
Really thank you, folks.
Yeah, thanks a lot, everybody. So.